So, let's compare and contrast the better plated training shoe. Is it the Nike Zoom Fly 5 or is it the Adidas Boston 12? Let's compare and contrast. Let's find out. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed to watch this content, thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other racing, running shoe, life updates that might be interesting. Who knows? Maybe I'll find something you'll like. Maybe I'll post a cool meme in my story. Who knows how it goes? Nevertheless, without further ado, let's begin. Specs of both shoes here, respectively. And the reason we're making this comparison video is because both of these companies released a daily racer style type of shoe that has a carbon plate associated with the shoe in some sort of way, but we all know that it's either not a carbon plate, it might be a nylon plate or some kind of plastic, but we label it as a carbon plate because everyone kind of gets the idea. So I'm not trying to say that both these shoes have a carbon plate. They might have a knockoff style material. They might, that's just kind of what's going on. We'll explain each one accordingly as we get into it. So yeah, let's break down kind of the general specs of both of them respectively. We'll start with the older of the two in my lineup, which is the Zoom Fly 5. As I've mentioned, like the specs are listed right here. This shoe, just the stick out pieces of it, that it does have a higher stack height than the Boston 12 overall. It does have, again, 41 millimeter heel, makes it illegal for racing, and we do have this 33 millimeter forefoot, giving us an 8 millimeter offset overall. Kind of a standard if you want to, use the shoe for training with like a Vaporfly Next Percent, for example. Gives it the same type of stack. In the upper, we do have a toughened mesh pattern going on, which I've talked about in depth on this channel in a couple of other videos. You can just go search through the channel, you might be able to find them. Otherwise, I will link them below for your reference. But yeah, some of the cons of the shoe is that the textile pattern with the shoelaces is kind of rough at some points, and it does apply a little bit of pressure in certain areas. Kind of wears off after a little while. That's kind of one of the things that's worth noting there. We do have ZoomX foam running the entire duration of the shoe with a carbon plate actually in this shoe that is visible in no place other than if you were to rip off like this recycled plastic ZoomX piece and you just like pulled it out, you'd probably see it in this shoe. Now, the major con of the shoe as a result is that because of its structure and its build, it is quite stiff in the first like 50 to 100 miles, and then after that you might get a little bit of the experience of the carbon plate, but the overall architecture of the shoe makes it really tricky to get the carbon plate, I would say, spring off the rebound effect of the shoe that Nike would have desired out of it, at least for me. And now I'm about 145 pounds at the time of filming this video. It's likely that the Zoom Fly 5 might be a carbon plate trainer marketed more for individuals a little bit heavier than me, so you would get a much greater rebound, and the carbon plate would give you a much more, a greater kickback perhaps. And I don't think I'm crazy for saying that, only because others are starting to notice that the Nike production style is starting to cater to runners that might be a little bit heavier than me, and as a result, the architecture of the shoe might be more catered to those users. And it's not to say that I couldn't run in this, I just might not have the same effect as if I were maybe 170, 180, 200 pounds running in this particular shoe. I digress. It's not a bad daily trainer shoe. I know a lot of people have mixed reviews about it. Some people love it. Some people really hate it. It took me about 150 plus miles to end up really liking the shoe before it got to a really sweet spot, and then it got really stiff, and then I started wearing it out to the point where I had to retire it from my daily use. So that's kind of the Zoom Fly 5 in a nutshell. Now, the Adidas Boston 12. Some of the specs worth noting here: this shoe does run at about 9.5 ounces in my size. We do have a heel of about 38 millimeters and a forefoot of about 31, giving this a 7 millimeter offset, so a little bit more of a midfoot kind of push compared to the Zoom Fly 5, but it's not nearly as high of a stack height as the Zoom Fly 5 either. So kind of, it's still pretty high, but it runs a little bit lower to the ground. So that's kind of cool overall. And now I've had a couple of these comparison videos about this shoe in the past couple of days, recent weeks, I guess you can say. Couple of pieces that I like and dislike of the shoe immediately is that I do like the architecture of the, what is this, our Light Strike Pro with a plastic plate, which resembles kind of like this three-pronged claw. You can see like a few of the prongs right there in the shoe. It does follow the architecture of the shoe, more or less, just the three pieces there, and provides a little bit of flexibility while you're running with the shoe in that particular case. I do like that. I do like the choice of the Continental rubber, which does last quite a while in this particular shoe, which is something we look forward to when you're running multiple miles. You want the shoe to last much longer, right? So with my experience with Adidas shoes is that in the Boston 11, the rubber was doing really well, the foam was doing really well. I destroyed the upper of the shoe where I tore it in a few places on both sides of the shoe, or on both shoes. So in the case of the Boston 12, that upper does not exist on the shoe. It was changed to something a little bit more flexible, a lot more breathable. But as a result, it doesn't really have a lot of sit for your foot to more or less, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't feel as streamlined. It doesn't sit nearly as well. There's a lot of extra motion in your foot. And as a result, you do have to tie it down a couple of times in the middle of your run to get the fit perfect. And that's a problem when you're trying to race or do like a long tempo session with no breaks or anything like that. If you're doing a fartlek session, this might not be the worst choice, because then like between every set you can tie your shoes and all that. But again, it's the choice of tongue, it's the choice of upper being this flexible, super flimsy material that kind of adds to some of the issues with the lockdown of this shoe. And as a result, you don't get the perfect rebound, and you don't get all the added effects of the Boston 12 ride at your feet. It just kind of moving around, and it's kind of not a waste, but it does suck because you do have to tie it down a couple of times before you get that awesome rebound that the shoe does initially provide, or that the Boston 11 at least provided in this case. So I kind of broke down the comparison of some of the specs there in the shoe. The big question here you're probably asking now is, between both shoes, which one should you buy? Well, as I usually say, it depends, but I will, in this particular case, kind of lean more, I don't know. I didn't think about this before the video. Now that I'm kind of like running through the specs and based on experience, I do have like about 200, 300 plus miles in this shoe. I do have about 100 plus in this one. I'd say at this point in time, I did enjoy the overall comfort of the Boston 12 as a carbon plate trainer. Just again, the upper is not as, it's not as, I guess, streamlined as something like the Zoomfly 5s, which like sat really well on your foot. Not nearly as well as the Boston 11, I digress. Point there is that there's a lot of comfort to this shoe, so if you're seeking comfort in your run, this is a better pick. And it has, again, the plastic plate, which has its own added benefits of a lot more flexibility with the same rebound effect that a normal carbon plate that runs the entire duration of your foot may provide. But again, the trade-off here is that you do have to figure out your lock fairly quickly in the shoe's lifespan, or as you're running, you're going to end up retying the shoe just to get the fit properly done. Now, if you were looking for that speed and you're looking for something a little bit more reliable in that department, I would probably lean more for the Zoomfly 5, mostly because, again, I've had no issues with this upper. It is kind of sinking in this particular case, but once you're locked into this shoe, the fit is quite streamlined, minus some of the pressure points they experience in this textile up here. But once you get the ride past 50, 100 miles, you start feeling the effects of the ZoomX foam working in tandem with the carbon plate that runs the duration of this shoe. And that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for that rebound, you're looking for that speed, and it's there. The only issue is that you do have to break it in, and the problem here is that, like with the Boston 12, there is no break-in period. Like immediately when I started running in this shoe, the effects I was looking for were right there, and it was just smooth sailing from just the get-go. So you have the comfort, you have the lifespan based on what you can see on the bottoms of the shoe, and then you have the speed. So more or less, I would say that's kind of your question that you should be answering in your lineup. If you're looking for comfort and you're looking for long-term reliability, I would lean more for the Boston 12. If you're looking for a shoe that'll last you about 300 miles, that has some speed, that has a little bit of a break-in period, but is going to be reliable for your, tempo, threshold, fartlek workouts, I'd lean more for the Zoomfly 5. So comfort down here, speed up here. I'd label the shoes like probably here and probably here-ish if we were to do our like XY diagram. So that's, I think, where I would leave it. So if you agree or disagree with the assessment, let me know in the comments below. If you've owned both shoes and you have mixed reactions to them, or you have the flipped reactions where this is more comfortable and this is faster as a result, let me know as well. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the Boston 12 and the Zoomfly 5 at this time. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.